In the beginning. No, I'm not going to go back to Genesis. It's interesting, as I drove here today, I was telling my wife, Amy, Hong Kong Bakery is just about 1 block north of here. And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to take you back to humbling beginnings. Being born in Taiwan, and the first generation immigrant here. And we'll stay on this slide for a little bit. As you look at the slide on the upper left-hand corner here, and this is me back in Taiwan. I'm the young one, sitting on my father's lap. I have 2 older siblings. This is where it all began, and I still remember when I was a kid running around in the streets of Taiwan that there was actually a missionary that came and visited our neighborhood. I had no idea what she was talking about back then. We were just little kids playing in the streets of Taiwan. Front door of my house was a big farmland. And this present day, I don't think that farm field is there anymore. When my parents came in, when they first immigrated to the United States, they brought just me, because if you look at the picture there, I was the youngest one. And they left my older brother and sister with my paternal grandparents. So they took myself, the youngest one, and they just came here because who did not want to come to the United States? In Chinese, the 2 words that's called the United States of America is Mei Guo. Mei means beautiful, and Guo means country. Right? America the beautiful. So if you're seeking opportunity, you come to the land of opportunity, Mei Guo. America the beautiful. And I'm going to guess, nothing's written here, I'm going to guess that there's a lot of folks in this congregation here or those watching online, especially from Nigeria or other parts of the world, that many of you who are currently living in the United States, that you probably came here also seeking for opportunity. And I did a few ribbon cuttings as a mayor of the city of Torrance, and as Pastor Julia said, I think there was some medical office. I did a grand opening over there on Torrance Boulevard not too long ago. I believe they're run by Nigerians. And definitely, when my parents came here, they were not educated. Sometimes people look at Asians like myself and just make certain assumptions. They came here from Taiwan with no college degree. My father pumped gas for people. Back then, every gas station was full service. Many of you probably don't even know what full service gas station means anymore. There was a time in America that when you went up to a gas station, there was a gas station attendant. He or she would fill up your gas tank and clean your windows. That was how it was done. And there was a time my father was one of those attendants. He was good with his hands, so eventually, after waiting on tables and restaurants, working at various machine shops, it was just really, what can we do to make a living? Because everybody wants to come here. He had a decent job in Taiwan, but he wanted to come here. He had to start from the bottom once again. Even attempted to run his own restaurant back on Carson Street. Early 70s, there once was a restaurant that only lasted 2 years. That was called House of Chen. Very creative name. He finally learned, he went to night school at Carson High School, right down the street here, not too far. And took an auto shop and learned how to fix cars. Maybe we'll stay on that first slide for a while. And so he learned how to fix cars. And he took a risk years later and opened up his own shop in Monterey Park called Garvey Auto Repair Center. My mother she knew how to type, so she was a key punch operator. Anybody in this audience even know what a key punch even means? Raise your hand. Only a few, because we're dating ourselves. If you know what a key punch is, that means you're probably north of 50 at least. There's no such thing as key punch operators now. Everybody's on their desktop or laptop computers. Or in many cases, people don't even use computers. They only use their smartphones. We've come a long way. I was fortunate that I was able to graduate from Carson High School and enter UCLA and earn an electrical engineering degree. After graduating from UCLA, we're talking graduating UCLA March of 1986. And Amy and I got married July of 1986. I'm taking you back in time. I'll put this back in context soon. Graduate March of 86. You say, wait, Mayor Chen, how did you graduate March of 86? People graduate during the summer. I was a slow student. It took me 4 years and 1 quarter. We got married in July of 86, and we put the down payment for our first home in August of 86. This is 1 month after we got married. Someday, if I have a lot of time, somebody asks me, what is the secret? I will share that with you, but I think I have 28 minutes left, so that's not going to do today. July 86, we got married, and 11 months later, our first daughter was born. May of 87. Can you imagine? These are all major events for someone who just graduated from college, got married, down payment for a first home, and then I became a father, all within 12 months at the age of 25. Still on the first page here, going to UCLA, that very first quarter was shocking. And maybe some of the folks understand if you're very educated. Graduating out of Carson High School, about 3 or 4 blocks down the street here, I was probably number 1, 2, or 3 in high school, and I really thought I was somebody. Going to UCLA that first quarter, I realized quickly that I was nobody. Because now we're competing with the top students in the world. Right? Very, very different. There are probably a lot of Nigerians that were just killing me in class. I humbly crawled out of UCLA and got my degree in electrical engineering and got a job that you can see it on the picture there on the upper left or upper right. Worked at Hughes Aircraft, which current day is Raytheon. I worked on airborne radars. And what you see on the slides here is it's an F-18 Super Hornet. So I worked on radars and electronic warfare systems on F-14s and F-18s, and as you can see. And after Amy and I got married, one of the first things we decided to do, actually when she was pregnant with our first one, we said, is it possible for us to raise our family on a single income? And by the grace of God, we made that decision. And you can see in the lower left-hand corner there, those are our kids in Sequoia back in the early days. When most of our peers were taking vacations, because at that time there was a term called DINK, D-I-N-K, double income, no kids. So DINK was a very popular term at that time because as soon as they graduated from college, they got a job, and they were married with 2 income. They were always telling me all the places they've gone to vacation. So most of their vacations are like Hawaii, Europe, different parts of the world. Where you can see that picture in Sequoia was driving vacation with the kids. And that's what we did. We decided to live simply and on 1 income because we thought the best way to raise our family and our kids was to have Amy at the time to be a full-time mother because those were our values. Fast forward 33 years later, working for the defense as a defense contractor. I retired at the age of 55. That was the youngest age I could retire. So remember what I just said. We got married. We decided we're going to be a single income family. I worked at one company all my life, even though the name changed from Hughes Aircraft to Raytheon. That doesn't happen nowadays. A person stays at one location. 33 years later, we're retired at the age of 55. And this is where it goes. Maybe we'll go on to the next page now. 1 month after I retired, at the age of 55, I told Amy, I said, I felt this deep sense of calling. Can we go next slide, please? Age of 55, and then I told Amy I felt a deep sense of calling to serve in the public sector. Mind you, that was not the plan. When I retired from Raytheon, there was 3 things on my bucket list. I was going to write a book. The book was going to have a theme, and maybe someday I will write that book. The theme was A Glimpse of God's Amazing Grace. And the reason that I want to write a book about that was not to brag about myself, but really to give God praise. That a person like myself, being a first-generation immigrant, can live and be raised in a blue-collar family, to get education, to work, and to raise a family and retire at the age of 55 on a single income. And we lack nothing. My pastor once told me, I'm going to read a little bit here after I got elected back in 2018. So I jumped forward. So with a lot of hard work, what I decided to do was start vetting myself, because once I felt a calling, first thing was write a book. The other thing was I wanted to train and participate in what you call the Ironman triathlon. The big one in Kona, Hawaii. We're talking about 2-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and then a full 26.2-mile marathon. So that was the second item on the bucket list. Third item on the bucket list was to start a leadership ministry among my church, among the men in my church. And the reason I wanted to start a ministry among the men in our church is because my observation growing up in the church for many years is within the church that the men is called to be taking positions of leadership or headship. And I observe, at least in my surrounding area, that most of the ministry leadership was actually done by women. Not that women cannot be in leadership. I just felt there was a lack of men stepping up to be leaders. Right? And that is why that was my third thing on my bucket list, was to take young men from high school and on and then teach them and model them what true biblical leadership really is. To get off the cell phone, to go backpacking or hiking, and really learn to take lead. So those were 3 things on the bucket list. So I vetted myself to run for city council, and interesting is everybody I talked to said, "You are crazy." And in some ways, you have to be crazy for God to do something like this, right? Question 1, have you ever been a commissioner in the city? No. Do you have social media? No. Do you have Facebook? No. Do you have Instagram? No. Do you have Twitter? No. Does anybody know you in the community? No. So what makes you think you can get elected? You're absolutely right. There's no way statistically I can be elected for someone with no visibility in the community. And I had no social media because I worked on a lot of classified programs at Raytheon. It was better that no one knew I existed other than my family, right? by a miracle of God, by hard work, a lot of door knocking, begging for a lot of people for campaign donations that's not tax deductible. The miracle of God happened in June 2018. I was elected as Torrance City Council. And it was during that term while I was city councilman that in the introductory video that in May 2019, I felt the calling to request an agenda item to put our national motto in the city council chambers: "In God we trust." And as back then in 2019, and often what we see today in our world, in our community, I was surprised and shocked by how much opposition I actually received to put our nation's motto in the city council chambers. I was called a racist, a bigot, medieval, just because I was asking the city council. As a matter of fact, praise God, you know, the only reason that In God We Trust is in the city council chamber today is we have a 7-member council, and to get anything passed in the city of Torrance, you need 4 votes. And I had a split vote of 4-3 and got that passed. Another miracle of God. One was me getting elected. Second was put In God We Trust in the city council chamber. And not only that, you know, one of the reasons to have that in there is as elected officials, and you will see them often on TV, social media, is that elected officials can easily start believing in their own story. They like to be called Your Honor, sitting in places being called a dignitary. And I think oftentimes pride seeps in, even though at times it's unknowingly. And sometimes it's knowingly. And I felt putting In God We Trust right above us as a way to humble all our elected officials, is that it's not about us. And it's about the people that we serve. My pastor once told me after I got elected as city council, he came up and said, you know, George, your story is a little bit like Esther in the Bible. Since I can't now remember Esther, I'm going to read it for you. Esther 4:14. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Looking at the rearview mirror, God was preparing me to serve in the public sector and molding me for such a time as this, unbeknownst to me. Why do I say that? Well, let's talk about not only God's calling, but also how I transitioned. Being a first-generation immigrant from a house of blue-collar workers, I represent the life experience of an immigrant, just like other folks inside the city. As an engineer, our main job is to solve problems. As a defense contractor, we solve problems for the Department of Defense. As elected officials, we solve problems for the people in the community. When I got promoted as a program manager at Raytheon, I had the experience of managing budgets, contracts, schedule, risks, and people. As an elected official, I am required to manage the city's budget, the performance of the city's services, manage risks. This time, not for the Department of Defense, once again, for the people of our city. Third item, my Christian values. Ultimately, your values will determine your policies, right? As I see the congregation here and folks from my community as I grow up, I see that without being political as in my office, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, what is missing in our city, as I shared in the beginning when I got up here, is God is missing in our lives, in our country. Would you say that? As an engineer, we can see facts from chaff. You know, just remember, I used to work on defense electronics, airborne radar systems, and electronic warfare systems. There are times when we have to develop systems that when the enemy is about to shoot us with their missile, we can deploy defensive measures. Sometimes it's called chaff. Chaff is like shredded tinfoil. We release the chaff as a decoy so that the missile will go after the decoy as opposed to hitting our airplane. As an engineer, I was able, as a elected official with an engineering background to solve problems, I was able to transfer that experience, that the noise generated by 3 or 4 people in the community, creating a lot of noise, oftentimes doesn't represent the entire community. You have to see through the chaff, right, to see what the community really wants. And with biblical values combined with seeing the facts of data, oftentimes the answer becomes very self-evident, not very complicated. As an elected official with that type of experience and background and with Christian values, it helps me not to be blown back and forth by the wind, not making decisions based on if I'm going to win 1 or 3 votes from a very small vocal group. I can make decisions and live with my decisions based on Judeo-Christian values. Man, Pastor Julius, I am all over the place. You know that when I got elected as the councilman back in 2018, 4 years later, roughly 3 years later, I was approached by community members to run for mayor. And my wife Amy will know what it takes. I skipped one part of the story here. I had to actually run for council 2 times. Because the first time I got elected in June 2018, it was an at-large seat. It's a 4-year term. However, I had to run again in 2020 because the city changed into district. And so I had to run again without finishing my first term. I had to run another campaign to represent West Torrance. And by God's grace, we're victorious. So I had to run a second election. So now if you follow my story, I got elected very first time by the grace of God and the miracle of God. And then within 2 years, I had to run another election, running against someone who was already a veteran councilman for 6 years and a retired Torrance police lieutenant. Those are against all odds, right? You're talking about someone who's an experienced councilman running against me, a retired police lieutenant. with the endorsement of Torrance Police Department and the Torrance firefighters. You know, March 2020, when I got elected as District 2 City Councilman, was miracle number 2, I would say. I don't think anybody predicted that one, because that one was a very hard one. So now I jump to. Got elected councilman in 2018, June. Got elected as Torrance Councilman District 2 2 years later, which is the March 2020 election. About a year after that, we're talking early 2021 now, I got approached by community members would I consider running for Torrance City Mayor. If you know how hard it is to run the election, I have not stopped running for election. I ran 2 consecutive ones, so the community is asking me, can you stand up and run again for the very next election for the city of Torrance as mayor? You know, Amy and I had to pray about this once again, because everybody still thought I was a rookie councilman. So a rookie councilman's going to run for mayor now? It's kind of like, whoa. So we prayed about it and felt God moving us in that way. And so we decided that, yes, we'll run for mayor for the June 2022 election. As you can see, because I'm standing here before you, that miracle number 3 actually happened. It's interesting what the Daily Breeze, a Daily Breeze reporter came to my office about a month after I got elected and had a whole hour interview. And this is their headline. I believe if you actually search for Daily Breeze, probably around August 2022, I was labeled the first person of color to be Torrance mayor in 100 years. You know, I never campaigned to elect the Asian guy. You know, oftentimes I don't campaign, I don't look at myself as, ethnic minority. You know, I am a resident just like all of you. Just working hard, trying to make a living, an honest living, hardworking, raise a family, and be a positive contributor to the community. To this day, this is still the way I run the city of Torrance. Simple ways, as Pastor Julia said. Actually, Pastor Julia said the approved budget for the city of Torrance for the fiscal year 2024-2025 is actually $580 million, more than $500 million. We had to take the city reserves back when we were first elected, $581,000. And last month, exactly 1 month ago, I gave my State of the City address. Our reserves actually went beyond the $70 million. It went from $581,000 to $131 million. And there's no big secrets around that. You know, we run the city just like we would run our household. You don't spend more than you take in. You set aside some money for reserves in case a rainy day comes. You don't dip into that reserves just because you want a new pair of shoes, a new pair of car, or the latest iPhone or iPad, right? You live with what you have. You build up those reserves for a day when the plumbing and the water leaks unexpectedly, so you have money to make those repairs. Those are simple philosophy that we do in our household, and it's a simple philosophy I ask the city of Torrance staff to run the city. No different than we would do for our private Then I'm going to come down to closing. So I'm going to end it probably a little bit earlier, Pastor Julius, and if there's some question and answer. Because I think maybe we'll go down to the next slide, please. This one I was going to diverge a little bit about what we did as an economic development approach, and I'm going to only touch that very briefly, and just to be talking about this in the Sunday message just seems a little bit off. But since I'm a mayor, I have to say that the most important thing as a elected official or city government is public safety, protect the city. And that's why we put a lot into public safety. With the shortage of police officers, we put cameras in the city so we can see what's going on in the city so that we deploy effectively. The second thing the city needs to do is generate revenue. Because at the end of the day, even this church environment, I'm going to say it's not about the money, it's all about the money. To run a city, because if we don't generate enough revenue, we will not be able to provide competitive salary for our police officers. We will not be able to pay competitive salary for our firefighters, for our park and recreation, for our street sweepers, picking up the trash. So at the end of the day, the city needs to generate revenue, because if the city does not generate revenue, then your services will suffer. What you see on the slide here is one of the strategies was we look at the city of Torrance and looking at the data. Remember, I'm an engineer. What does the data of the city tell us? The city of Torrance has a roughly 37 to 38% Asian American Pacific Islander population. The city of Torrance has the highest concentration of Japanese Americans in the 48 contiguous states, right here in the city of Torrance. When we heard the news that Shohei Ohtani signed with Los Angeles Dodgers, was one of the first things the city mayor does. After talking to my fellow Councilman John Kaji, I sent a personal letter. The upper left-hand picture is myself and the mayor of Oshu City, Japan. Why do I share that with you? Oshu City is the hometown of Shohei Ohtani. We developed a Friendship City. He came with his delegation. We signed a Friendship City agreement in October 2024. This picture on the upper right hand was August 2025, roughly 2 months ago. That person next to me in the picture in front of that banner of Shohei is none other than Toru Ohtani, Shohei Ohtani's father. We had a baseball team from Oshu City, Little League, who came and played international friendship games with Torrance Little League baseball players as our first friendship games, international friendship games. And that was our way of promoting City of Torrance internationally. The reason why we promote the City of Torrance internationally is because Torrance is such an international city. Right? We've got Nigerians in the City of Torrance. We have Japanese Americans in the City of Torrance. We have people. We got this guy who's standing here talking in front of you. The first person born in Taiwan is the mayor of the City of Torrance. To generate revenue, we could compete with the local cities nearby in the South Bay, or we can tap into where new resources of revenue can be coming from. It's coming from the international community. And that is one of the reasons we established the Friendship City a strategy, is a way to bring in international visitors into the city of Torrance, to come here and watch a Dodger game, to stay at our hotels, go to our restaurants, and go to our shops. All those things, go in our hotels, go in our restaurants, go in our shops, is revenue. Okay, so can we go on to the very last slide? So you'll see, if you go to Torrance City Hall, you'll see that's what In God We Trust looks like. It is so huge. You know, the miracle of God never stops. That picture you see there, and you see the dais behind me, you see how close the 7 seats are on the city of Torrance? This was 2019 when we put In God We Trust. Current day, because 2020, we had COVID. Remember the 6 feet, everything 6 feet. The dais today is all separate, much wider than this. You know, in all God's humor, I would say, nowadays, if you go to the city of Torrance, with the seats spread out this far, and visitors come to the city of Torrance, when they want to take a picture in the city of Torrance, because everything is wider, to make the picture doesn't look like a very skinny horizontal, they have to be able to expand it vertically. They cannot help but have the words, "In God We Trust," in the photo. I will tell you, we did not know that effect. Who would have known 2019 that the dais chairs would be spread out wider, and then COVID would come, and then now almost every single picture in City Hall when visitors come cannot, unless they intentionally try to blot out "In God We Trust." And now I'm going to touch on something. It's not meant to be political, but it's just something that I reflected on recently with the tragic shooting of Charlie Kirk. I thought about the tragic ending for a person at the age of 31. And you see the quote I have over there saying, "Living with purpose." It caused me to reflect and challenge myself. I'm hoping it challenged all of you. And that's why I labeled the very last slide, "Living with Purpose." I don't believe any of us, in most cases, can predict when we're going to take our last breath. I don't believe Charlie Kirk, when he got shot that day, he thought that was going to be his last breath. I bring that up as a way to challenge you and myself and my friends to reflect on how we're living our lives. Our earthly lives will all end. For many of us, we still think our runways is still another 30 years, 40 years. For some of us who are ill and fighting just to take another breath, we know our runway is getting very, very short. Maury Schwartz, under the subtitle there, was the author of a book called Tuesdays with Maury. He was dying from ALS. And what he said, the truth is, once you learn how to die, you learn how to live. He knew his runway was getting short, so he used the final days of his life to teach others this lesson, explaining that accepting death gives meaning to life. Would you agree that as Christians, sometimes we get distracted just by life? We need this, we need to go to a job, I need to fulfill this responsibility, this obligation. iPhone 17 just came, I need to get iPhone 17. The latest gadget is this. But at the end of the day, I believe once we learn how to die, we learn how to live with purpose. Now, I believe not every one of us is going to be like myself. My story is unique. I believe God, like Queen Esther, wrote the story of my life long before I knew about it. But I believe each one of you here in this congregation, those online, you have your unique gifts and talents that God has given you. I just ask you that when you hear that prompting and calling of God, be obedient to his calling. Exercise wisdom and discernment from God through the Holy Spirit. Be courageous to impact the world because you don't know how long your runway is. I serve today because I see the United States, though from the beginning, remember I said everybody want to come here as a land of opportunity. I believe the United States is the new mission field. Okay? Remember, our country needs God. So I leave with you, be courageous, be obedient to God's calling, and leave a legacy. Thank you. May God bless you.